You ever notice how people act when your name slips into a room before you do? It's fascinating. Suddenly everyone starts whispering, leaning in, tightening their voices like they're discussing a dangerous secret. They don't say it out loud, of course not, they never do. But you can feel it, this tension, this strange electricity twisting in the air, because somewhere, out of sight, a serious fight is happening about you. Not with fists and blood, no, something messier. People wrestling with their own fears, their own guilt, their own memories of the way they treated you. They're arguing about who you've become, about who gets to stand beside you now, about who lost the right to even say your name. Funny, isn't it? You didn't ask for any of this. You didn't demand loyalty, didn't beg for recognition. You just survived. You just kept moving. And survival has a way of turning into a battlefield when people realize they no longer have access to the version of you they once underestimated. They're fighting because your rise exposed their intentions, their insecurities, their masks. And now they're scrambling, desperate to claim a story they didn't help you write, desperate to keep their place in a life they thought would always be easy to walk in and out of. But things aren't so simple now, are they? Your growth came with a price, and the bill is being paid in the shadows by everyone who didn't believe you'd make it this far. People argue the loudest when they realize they misjudged your worth. It's almost poetic, in a twisted sort of way, how people suddenly grow passionate, emotional, even protective, when the person they once ignored starts glowing in places they never expected. They don't yell because they care. They yell because reality finally slapped them hard enough to bruise. They yell because somewhere deep inside, there's this uncomfortable truth clawing at their pride. They had you in their hands once, and they didn't realize what they were holding. They treated you like an extra piece in their little game, something replaceable, something ordinary. And now that you've stepped into your own voice, your own strength, your own transformation, well, now they're losing their minds about it. Funny how quiet they were when you needed them. How uninterested they were when you were stretching yourself thin just to prove you were worthy of attention. Back then, they couldn't be bothered. Back then, you were just background noise to their spotlight. But now they're raising their voices at each other, debating your value like you're some artifact they freshly discovered. They're scrambling to rewrite history, to make themselves look like they saw your potential from the beginning. But they didn't, not even close. Their arguments are nothing but guilt wearing the mask of concern. They shout not because they're fighting for you, but because they're fighting the realization that they misread you completely, and now they have to deal with the consequences of that blindness. There's a certain madness in watching people panic over a truth they tried so hard to ignore. They didn't want to believe you were capable of rising without their assistance. They laughed at your efforts, rolled their eyes at your dreams, dismissed your growth as temporary. But something about you didn't break the way they expected. Something about you kept going. And when someone survives the storms designed to drown them, it has a way of shaking the ground under the feet of those who underestimated them. So now they're stumbling, arguing, pointing fingers, blaming each other for not appreciating you earlier. Deep down, they know the truth. They all played their part in overlooking you. They raise their voices because silence terrifies them now. Your silence especially. They try to figure out when you stopped caring about their opinions, when you stopped waiting for their approval, when you stopped centering your choices around their comfort. They never noticed that shift when it happened. Oh no. They only noticed when the consequences crashed into their little bubble. They talk loudly because they're trying to drown out the fear whispering inside their skulls. The fear that they lost you. The fear that you're outgrowing them. The fear that they don't matter to you the way you once mattered to them. Fear makes people loud. Fear makes people foolish. Fear makes people fight. And isn't it amusing how they all suddenly have an opinion about your life now? One says you're acting different. Another says you're becoming better. Another claims you're being influenced by someone new. They throw theories around like confetti because accepting the truth would shatter whatever pride they have left. The truth being that you changed because you had to. Because staying small for their comfort was killing you slowly. Because the only way to breathe again was to stop needing people who only showed up when it was convenient for them. They misjudged you. And now they're paying the price with confusion and chaos. They swing their words like weapons at each other, each trying to prove they understood you best, each trying to claim they were there for you, even when you remember the silence, the neglect, the empty promises. And while they're busy arguing, you stand there watching, knowing none of their noise changes who you've become. They're not fighting for you. They're fighting their own shame. They're fighting the ghost of the version of you they took for granted. They're fighting because they want to erase the fact that you slipped out of their control the moment you discovered your own worth. They once saw you as small, forgettable, replaceable. Now they see you as something they can't afford to lose, something they can't easily explain, something that forces them to confront the lies they told themselves. That's why the fight is loud. That's why the tension is thick. That's why their words crack under pressure. Because when people misjudge someone who eventually rises, they don't just lose a person. They lose the illusion of superiority they hid behind. They lose the comfort of believing you needed them more than they needed you. They lose the story in which they were the important ones. And nothing sparks conflict quite like losing a story where you were the hero and realizing the real. The story was never about you at all. Your growth exposes who wanted you weak and who wanted you winning. It's strange how people reveal their true colors without even realizing it. All you have to do is start rising, not dramatically, not with fireworks, just quietly, steadily, in a way. That shows you're no longer willing to play small for their comfort. And suddenly the world shifts. People you thought were cheering for you start twitching. People you barely noticed start watching. People who once dismissed you now study you like a threat. Because growth has this beautiful, cruel way of peeling back the masks everyone wears. It doesn't matter what they said before. The truth shows in how they react when you stand up straighter than they remember. You'll notice the ones who always applauded your struggles but grew silent at your progress. They liked you better when you were unsure, when you were predictable, when you were clinging to their words like they were oxygen. They liked you vulnerable because it made them feel significant. As long as you stayed beneath them, their world made sense. They could advise you, correct you, pity you, control you. But the moment you stop needing their permission to shine, they start coughing on their own envy. They don't clap anymore. They don't congratulate you. They bring up your past mistakes, your flaws, your insecurities. They try to drag you back into the version of yourself that made them comfortable. Those are the ones who wanted you weak. Then there are the ones who always smiled when you failed, but only because your failure confirmed their superiority. They liked being the successful one in your dynamic. They loved the role of the inspirational figure, the one you looked up to, the one who got to feel important. But now that you're leveling up, growing sharper, faster, more confident, they feel their grip slipping. They realize they're no longer the center of your orbit. They feel threatened by the possibility that you might surpass them. And nothing terrifies a small mind more than the thought of someone they underestimated rising above them. That's when the passive-aggressive comments start. The subtle insults disguised as jokes, the just trying to help remarks dripping with insecurity. They wanted you weak because your weakness protected their ego. But there's another group, a quieter one, the one you never really noticed before. These are the people who smile for real, who don't flinch when you succeed, who don't feel smaller just because you're becoming bigger. They don't compete with you because they're too busy growing themselves. They don't resent your progress because they know progress isn't a limited resource. They don't cling to your old version because they actually like who you're becoming. These are the ones who wanted you winning. They're rare, almost suspiciously rare. Which is why their sincerity stands out like a flickering neon sign in a dim alley. They liked the strong version of you because they weren't intimidated by it. They understood that your rise didn't mean their fall. They support you without hidden motives, without envy, without fear, and your growth exposes them just as clearly as it exposes the others. You see, the moment you grow, you stop fitting into the boxes people built for you. And that terrifies the ones who love boxes. It threatens those who loved being above you. It disrupts those who depended on your limitation. But growth doesn't care about their comfort. It keeps moving, and as you move, you'll notice something else. People start fighting, not physically, not openly, but their expressions, their tone, their sudden urge to compare themselves to you. They fight their own panic. They fight their own regret. They fight the fact that you're proving them wrong without saying a single word. Your growth becomes a mirror they long to break because it reflects everything they didn't become, everything they didn't expect you to be. Some will try to sabotage you. Some will try to claim credit for your transformation. Some will try to guilt you for changing. But every attempt reveals the truth. They preferred you weak. They thrived when you doubted yourself. They were loyal only as long as you stayed beneath their ceiling. Your growth wasn't supposed to go this far. In their minds, you were supposed to stay small enough to depend on them, insecure enough to accept their scraps, predictable enough to remain manageable. When you outgrow their expectations, they call you arrogant. When you break their limits, they call you ungrateful. When you stop shrinking, they call you different. They don't realize that's the whole point. And yet the ones who wanted you winning, they don't fight, they don't guilt, they don't cling. They just keep walking beside you the same way they did when you had nothing. Because your rise doesn't shake them. It inspires them. It strengthens them. And if you pay attention, you'll notice something very simple. The ones who want you weak fall away as your path rises, but the ones who wanted you winning rise with you step by step, without fear, without envy, without hesitations. From you creates conflict in those who depended on your confusion. It's almost amusing, isn't it, how some people function only when you're unsure of yourself. When you were stumbling, doubting, second-guessing everything you said, they felt powerful. They felt necessary. They felt like the experts of your life, the authority over your choices, the gatekeepers of your confidence. As long as you were confused, they had a role, they had relevance, they had a reason to exist in your story. But the moment you went quiet, not the silence of defeat, but the silence of clarity, they started panicking in ways they won't admit. They feel the shift before they understand it. And nothing terrifies someone more than losing control of a person they thought they had completely figured out. Your silence disrupts them. It interrupts the script they rehearsed about you. You used to explain every emotion, every thought, every mistake like you owed them an explanation. You used to overshare, hoping they'd finally understand you. You used to justify yourself, trying to fix relationships that were never meant to be saved. But now you don't explain, you don't justify, you don't offer anything. You respond with quiet, and that quiet is louder than any argument you ever had. They can't stand it. They need the noise. They need the old version of you who pleaded to be understood. They need the chaos of your confusion because that's where their influence lived. When you were lost, they felt found. When you questioned yourself, they felt certain. When you handed them your doubts, they used them as weapons. But silence is dangerous. Silence is clarity. Silence means you stop playing their game. And clarity steals the foundation from those who built their comfort on your insecurity. Now they sit in their rooms, replaying conversations, trying to locate where you slipped out of their grip. They read your messages twice, 3 times, overanalyzing every blank space. They stare at the phone like it owes them an explanation for your calm. They're irritated, confused, restless. They want you to go back to the version of yourself that needed them, because without you, confusion, they have nothing to correct, nothing to fix, nothing to feel superior about. Your silence forces them to face themselves, and some people can't handle their own reflection without using someone else's weakness as a distraction. They start whispering about you. They start asking others if you've changed. They start telling stories that make them sound like victims of your growth. They twist your quiet into arrogance, your stillness into disrespect, your peace into distance. They do anything at all to avoid admitting the truth. You finally understand your worth, and now they don't know where they fit. They depended on your chaos because it kept them comfortable. Your uncertainty made them feel intelligent. Your emotional storms made them feel stable. But now the storm is gone, and they're left with the unsettling calm of someone who finally sees through their intentions. And that's when the conflict begins. Not with you. You're quiet, watching, detached. The conflict happens inside them. They fight themselves. One part of them wants to reach out, pretend everything is normal, pull you back into old patterns. Another part feels threatened, afraid that your silence means you've outgrown them. Another part feels guilty, realizing they only supported you when you were struggling. They go back and forth, wrestling with their own conscience, but they never admit it. They'd rather blame your transformation than face their own dependence on your confusion. You taught them who they were by becoming someone they can't manipulate anymore. Silence exposes people. It shows who respected you and who only respected their ability to influence you. When you spoke too much, they felt comfortable. When you poured your heart out, they felt in control. But when you closed the door, when you stopped explaining yourself, when you reclaimed your inner world, they lost their grip. And losing control feels like betrayal to those who only loved you when you were lost. They start arguments behind your back, debates in their minds, scenarios in their imagination, all because they can't understand how you moved on without announcing it. Some will reach out pretending they care. Some will accuse you of acting different. Some will stay silent but watch you obsessively, waiting for cracks. But the conflict inside them grows louder every day you remain calm. They depended on your confusion for their identity. Now your silence dismantles them from the inside out. And the beautiful part is, you didn't do anything except choose peace over chaos, clarity over noise, self-respect over begging to be understood. Your silence did what your explanations never could. It forced them to confront the truth they never wanted to see. They needed your confusion more than they ever needed you. They fight because you became someone they can't control anymore. That's the real reason behind all the tension, the sudden arguments, the sharp little whispers floating around your name. It's not love. It's not concern. It's not loyalty. It's control. The loss of it. The fear of it. The absolute terror of watching someone evolve beyond the reach of their influence. People don't panic because you change. They panic because they can't change you back. They can't shove you into the same box you once lived in. They can't predict your reactions, can't read your expressions, can't twist your emotions into their own advantage. You've become unpredictable, and unpredictable people are the most dangerous to those who depend on having power over you. They remember the older version of you, the softer one, the quieter one, the one who apologized for things that weren't your fault just to keep the peace. They remember how easy you were to guilt, how quickly you bent yourself to please them, how you believed every criticism they threw at you. They miss they miss that version more than they'll ever admit, because that version made their world convenient. That version kept them comfortable. That version gave them control dressed up as concern. But that version is gone, and what replaced it is someone they never trained for. Someone who sees through their tricks, catches their manipulations, doesn't fall for their emotional traps. Someone who now knows the difference between attention and respect. Someone who knows better. They fight now because the new you is a threat. A threat to the image they created of themselves. A threat to the power they thought they held. A threat to the narrative where they were always the wise one, the strong one, the stable one. Your growth ruins their script. It exposes their strategies. It reveals how much they relied on your insecurity to feel important. And losing that dynamic feels like losing oxygen to people who survived on control. They scramble. They throw accusations, guilt trips, dramatic sighs, subtle insults. They try to make you feel guilty for your strength, as if you're betraying them by becoming someone who doesn't bow to their pressure anymore. They call you distant, cold, ungrateful. They say you've changed in a way they don't recognize. They twist your evolution into disrespect. They paint your boundary as insults. They act like your independence is a personal attack. And the funny thing is, they actually believe their own lies. They genuinely believe they're the victims in your story. Control does that to people. It blinds them. It convinces them they are owed the version of you that made their lives easier. They're not fighting you. They're fighting the reality that you're no longer manageable. Watch their eyes when you refuse to react, when you don't take the bait. When their manipulation rolls off you like dust instead of sinking into your skin. That look, part confusion, part frustration, part fear. That's what losing control feels like. They don't know what to do with someone who doesn't respond the way they expect. They poke, they prod, they push, hoping the old you will return. But you don't. And that terrifies them more than anything. The arguments happening behind your back, the sudden interest in your life, obsessive checking, the debates, they all come from one place: desperation. Desperate people don't think clearly. They don't act logically. They lash out, sometimes loudly, sometimes silently. But it all comes down to the same truth. They never cared about you as much as they cared about controlling the version of you that benefited them. You removed yourself from the old dynamic, and now they're left wrestling with their own reflection. They can't blame you anymore, can't manipulate you anymore, can't predict your reactions anymore. And when people can't control you, they try to control the story about you. They twist your strength into selfishness, your growth into rebellion, your boundaries into cruelty. They try to turn others against you because they think if they can't control you directly, maybe they can control the way you're perceived. But the most satisfying part comes from knowing none of it works. You've outgrown the mechanisms they used to operate on. You've outgrown the emotional traps they set. You've outgrown the version of yourself who once believed their approval was essential. Now you move with a freedom they can't chain down. And that freedom is exactly why they're fighting. Not because you did something wrong, but because you did something they never expected you learned to live without their permission. And people who can't control you will always fear you, always argue about you, always fight over you. Because deep down they know the truth. You were never theirs to control in the first place. You ever notice how people only start fighting over something after they realize its value? They walk past it 100 times, ignore it, laugh at it, brush it aside like dust on a jacket, until someone else bends down, picks it up, and says, "Oh, this is worth something." And suddenly the whole world wakes up like they've been slapped across the face. That's the funny thing about worth. Nobody sees it until someone else does. And right now, whether you believe it or not, there's a storm brewing. Because the thing they overlooked, underestimated, mocked, dismissed, stepped over, stepped on, talked down to, and wrote off just happened to be you. Now they're scrambling around in panic, trying to figure out how they missed the obvious. It's amusing, really. People spend so much time pretending to be clever, but they're always late to their own realization. And the moment they realize they were wrong about you, that's when the fight begins. Oh, not the polite kind. Not the please allow me kind. No, this is the kind where teeth clench, voices rise, and everyone starts pointing fingers, blaming each other, blaming fate, blaming the universe for letting you slip through their hands. They'll say they always believed in you. They'll swear they spotted your potential long before anyone else. They'll rewrite every memory, every moment, every conversation in their minds just to avoid admitting the truth. They never thought you'd become someone others would want. They never thought you'd grow sharp enough to demand respect. They never thought you'd grow strong enough to walk away. But now there's a fight, an ugly, quiet, backstage fight about who gets to claim you, who gets to approach you, who gets to stand next to you, who gets to pretend they were part of your story from the start. And you might think that's flattering. You might think that's justice. But the real comedy is how fast people switch roles when the spotlight shifts. The same ones who told you to lower your voice, shrink your dreams, stay in your lane, are now wrestling behind closed doors asking, who let them get this far? As if you needed their permission to rise. The truth is, people aren't fighting because they care about you. They're fighting because they fear what you becoming valuable means for them. They're not afraid of your glow. They're afraid of their dimness. They're not afraid of your strength. They're afraid of how weak they looked when they tried to break you. They're not afraid of your success. They're afraid of your memory because some part of them knows you remember every laugh, every doubt, every door they closed in your face. And now they're terrified you'll return the favor. But here's the fascinating part. The louder the fight about you becomes, the quieter you should be. Let them argue. Let them claw at each other. Let them reveal their motives, their insecurities, their desperation. Because the moment people start fighting over you, you've already won. You don't need to throw a punch when chaos swings on your behalf. You don't need to lift a finger when the world is busy revealing how much they misjudged you. There's a certain power in letting others fight for a place you once begged for. A power in watching them scramble for access to the very space they insisted you didn't deserve. And don't misunderstand, this fight isn't temporary. Oh no, it's only just beginning. Because once people see value, once they see potential, once they see momentum, they cling to it like it's their lifeline, not because they want to support you, but because they want to be seen standing next to you when your rise becomes undeniable. They want the association, the credit, the proximity to something burning bright. They want to claim you before anyone else does, because losing you now means admitting that they lost something priceless long before they even knew it was in their hands. And pride is the most fragile thing. Once it cracks, people will do anything to glue it back together, even if it means fighting over the very person they once ignored. They're fighting because your success exposes their mistakes. They're fighting because your elevation proves their judgment was flawed. They're fighting because your growth makes their stagnation impossible to hide. And they're fighting because somewhere deep in their anxious little minds, they know they can't control what you become anymore. That's the real reason the fight is so serious. It's not about you being chosen. It's about them realizing they couldn't stop it. Even if they tried, people always assume that when people start fighting over you, it must mean they suddenly love you, appreciate you, value you. That's the sweet little lie you're supposed to swallow. But the truth is far more amusing, far more twisted, far more predictable. They're not fighting because they care about you. They're fighting because they care about what having access to you does for them. You see, people treat value the way they treat fire. They want to stay close enough to feel warm, but not so close that they get burned. But when that fire becomes rare, when it becomes something only a few can touch, suddenly everyone wants to be the chosen one. Not for your sake, for theirs. They want the power of saying, they picked me. They want the comfort of being connected to something rising, something moving, something changing, something they couldn't produce on their own. And it's funny, isn't it, how the same people who once doubted you now argue about who should have supported you first. They rewrite the past like it's clay in their hands. Suddenly, every cold shoulder becomes a misunderstood moment. Every dismissive word becomes tough love. Every time they brushed you aside becomes something noble, something strategic, something they meant to do. They're desperate to paint themselves as your early believers because being late to your worth makes them look foolish. And people will do anything to avoid looking foolish, especially in front of others. So they fight, not because they want you, but because they want the story that comes with you. They want to be able to say, I knew them before all this. They want that backstage pass to your transformation so they can pretend they helped build it. They want the illusion of importance. They want the image of loyalty without ever having paid its price. They want the benefits of standing beside you without ever having stood behind you. And if someone else gets too close, if someone else takes the role they wish they had, well, suddenly that becomes a threat. A threat to their ego, their image, their status. A threat to the little fantasy they've created in their minds where you owe them something. So the fight begins not over you, but over the version of you they want to claim. And what's even more entertaining is how quietly this fight happens. Not in the open. No. In whispers, in private conversations, in subtle digs, in competitive compliments, in sneaky little moves meant to sabotage each other while pretending to support you. People will smile while sharpening knives behind the curtain. They'll clap for you while tugging someone else down. They'll praise you while plotting how to stay closest to your spotlight. It's a beautiful chaos, really, because it reveals something people try so hard to hide, their need to feel relevant, their hunger for a connection to anything that looks like growth, their panic at the idea of being left behind. And whether you notice it or not, you become the trophy, not a person, not a soul, not a story. A trophy, a shiny symbol they want on their shelf because it says something about them. Being next to you makes them feel bigger. Being chosen by you makes them feel superior. Being associated with you makes them feel like they've somehow won, even though they never played the game. And the moment they realize losing you means losing that feeling, they get desperate. That desperation is the spark. It starts small, like a flicker of envy. Then it grows into insecurity. Then into panic, then into this frantic, almost comical battle, where everyone wants to speak on your behalf, act on your behalf, decide what's best for you, as if you suddenly became incapable of thinking for yourself. They don't want you to choose. They want to choose for you. Because if you choose, they might lose. And losing you, losing access, losing importance, terrifies them more than they will ever admit. And once that fear sets in, they start doing things they once swore they'd never do. They break their dignified posture. They betray their polished persona. They reveal the cracks in their confidence. They stop pretending to be calm and start scrambling for your attention like children fighting over a toy. Because deep down, that's what this whole thing is, a childish competition dressed up in adult clothes, a desperate attempt to claim what they never nurtured, a fight for proximity to value they never believed in until someone else did. They're not fighting for you, they're fighting for what you represent, for the reflection of themselves they hope to see when they stand close to you, for the version of their story that sounds better when your name is in it, for the illusion of influence, control, relevance, for the comfort of telling themselves they still matter in your world, even though they didn't matter in your rise. You know what fascinates me the most? The way people suddenly start observing you like you're some unpredictable creature the moment they sense tension around your name. They tilt their heads, narrow their eyes, whisper to each other what's going on with them, as if they're studying a rare animal at the edge of a cage that's starting to bend. They don't know what's happening, but they can smell it, this strange, electric shift in the air, this invisible friction, this quiet uproar. And when people don't understand something, they get nervous. They start inventing explanations, stories, assumptions, anything to soothe the little tremor of fear crawling up their spine. Because nothing scares people more than losing control of a narrative they thought they owned. And you become the center of that nervousness, the eye of the storm. They can feel something swirling, circling, tightening around your presence. They see people acting differently around you, speaking softer, watching you with more caution, more awareness, more interest. And suddenly, everyone wants to know why. What changed? Why now? What makes you so important? They can feel the seriousness of the fight happening behind the scenes, even if they can't see it. That's what bothers them, the not knowing. People hate being left out of the truth, especially when the truth has your name on it. So they start watching you more closely, not with admiration, with suspicion, with curiosity that feels almost invasive. They examine everything you do, how you walk into a room, how you look at people, how you carry yourself now. They're searching for clues, signs, cracks, anything that might reveal why there's this sudden shift in the atmosphere. They don't understand that the battle happening about you isn't loud. It isn't public. It's quiet, strategic, boiling beneath the surface, where only the players involved can feel the heat. But the smoke always leaks out. And that smoke exposes something unsettling, that you're no longer predictable. You're no longer small enough to control, no longer safe enough to dismiss, no longer weak enough to overlook. And unpredictability makes people uncomfortable because it forces them to reevaluate their position. They used to know exactly where you stood. They used to believe they had you figured out. They used to think you were easy to replace, easy to ignore, easy to label. But now they don't know what you're capable of. Now they don't know where your power comes from. Now they don't know who's protecting you, supporting you, fighting for you behind the scenes. And uncertainty, my friend, is the breeding ground of fear. Fear changes how people behave, twists them. It makes them kinder on the surface, but sharper underneath. They begin to tread lightly around you, speaking in careful tones, offering fake smiles that don't reach their eyes. They ask questions they never cared about before. They try to check in, pretend they're on your side, pretend they always cared about your well-being. But the truth is obvious. They're not checking on you. They're checking on the situation, on the danger level, on the possibility that the fight happening about you might eventually involve them. And when people realize someone is being fought over, they start choosing sides, even if the fight was never theirs to begin with. They talk among themselves, weighing risks, trying to figure out which stance benefits them the most. support you, distance themselves, play neutral, pretend they never underestimated you. They perform emotional gymnastics trying to protect their own image. They want to appear supportive without actually taking responsibility. They want to appear loyal without having lifted a finger for you before. They want the benefits of being close to you without the consequences of being wrong about you in the past. But underneath all those polite gestures and suddenly warm smiles, there's something darker simmering. Resentment, not because you did anything wrong, but because your growth exposes them. Because your value shining now makes their blindness before feel unforgivable. Because the fight happening about you reminds them they never fought for you. And that guilt, that discomfort, that bruised pride, oh, it eats at them. So they watch you with a mixture of fascination and bitterness, trying to figure out how someone they once dismissed became someone others now argue over. And deep down, they're afraid of what that means for them. Because if people are fighting over you now, it means you've become a force. It means you matter. It means you're no longer accessible at their convenience. It means they can't treat you the same way they used to, and that terrifies them, because it means they have to change their behavior or risk being left out of the new world forming around you. They're scared because they don't know which version of you they're dealing with anymore. The one they thought they could control, or the one rising from the chaos they never saw coming.